If you're a Catholic husband and you've thought, my wife uses sex to control me, and then immediately felt guilty for even thinking it, this video is for you. Maybe she says things like, if you don't do X, don't expect anything in the bedroom. If you talk to me like that again, we're done in every way. If you don't agree with me, forget about sex. You know conjugal life is part of marriage. You know you shouldn't be groveling for it, but you also don't want to be a tyrant. So you end up stuck between chasing her like a boy or hardening your heart like a brute. Today, we're going to cut through that. Here's a composite of what I see again and again in Nolan Bot and coaching. Will, I'm a Catholic husband in my 30s, 3 kids. My wife uses sex like a reward and punishment system. If I disagree with her or say no to something, intimacy dries up. Then when I cave and do what she wants, things get better for a bit. I feel humiliated and resentful. I know I owe her the marriage debt, but I also feel like she's dangling it over me to get her way. What does righteous headship look like here? Am I just supposed to put up with this forever? If that's you, you're not crazy and you're not automatically a lustful creep. You're bumping into a real injustice in marriage that the church actually talks about. Almost no one explains to men. In this video, I want to walk you through 3 things. What the church actually teaches about the marriage debt and why weaponizing sex is a serious sin. The 4 mistakes husbands make when they feel controlled that quietly destroy respect and desire, and how to respond as a Catholic head of the household with justice, mercy, and firm boundaries. Stay with me, because if you get this wrong, you don't just stay frustrated. You train your wife and your children watching that a man's desires either don't matter at all, or they only matter when he begs. Both are un-Catholic. Let's start with foundations. The church has always taught that in valid marriage, husband and wife give each other a real right to conjugal relations. St. Paul, do not refuse one another, except perhaps by agreement for a season, lest Satan tempt you. Traditional moral theologians call this the marriage debt. Very simply, your wife has a right to your body. You have a right to hers. This right is mutual, not one way, and it's ordered to children, unity, and protection from sin. So Callan and McHugh put it in their classic moral theology manual like this in essence. Spouses have a serious obligation not to habitually refuse the marriage debt without just cause. Just causes can be things like serious illness, grave fatigue, or a clear danger to health or virtue. But using refusal as a weapon to punish, manipulate, or extort is gravely wrong. But using refusal as a weapon to punish, manipulate, or extort is gravely wrong. So a wife is not free to say, I'll only give myself if you do exactly what I want, when I want, how I want. That's not love. That's extortion with sacraments. At the same time, you as a husband are not free to treat your wife as a vending machine. You can shake whenever you feel like it. St. Thomas in De Malo is very clear. Lust turns a person into a thing for pleasure. Even in marriage, a man can sin gravely by using his wife like an object with no regard for her as a person. So here's the balance. Unjust refusal is a serious sin against justice and against charity. Coercive or degrading demands are a serious sin against chastity and charity. True marital intimacy is right time, right way, right intention, given freely, though sometimes with effort. If your wife is chronically refusing for petty reasons, or systematically using sex to force you to obey her will, she's not just tired or emotional. She is acting unjustly. And as head, you're not called to silently enable injustice. You're called to correct it rightly. If right now you're thinking, okay, but if I ever bring this up, she'll say I'm obsessed with sex. Keep listening, because the answer is not to preach at her about your rights. It starts with what you stop doing. Let me give you a composite story. Mark and Anna, married, 9 years, 3 young kids. At the start of marriage, intimacy was good. Then life happened. Stress, babies, late nights. He put on some weight. She became more anxious. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Whenever Mark said no to a purchase, raised a concern about in-laws, or tried to set a boundary with the kids, Anna would respond with coldness. Short answers, stone face, avoiding touch. If he pushed back too firmly, he'd hear, if you're going to be like this, don't expect me to want anything later. At first, he argued. Then he started apologizing for things he hadn't done wrong, just to keep the peace. The unspoken contract became, do it my way and I'll unfreeze. Cross me and I'll close the bedroom. Fast forward a few years. He was resentful and ashamed. She was anxious, exhausted, and quietly contemptuous. Their arguments were never really about the thing at hand. They were about this unspoken thread. Here's what Mark didn't realize. Every time he caved to that pattern, he wasn't just being patient. He was teaching his wife, sex moves me more than God's order does. You are effectively the head, and I'll prove it by crawling when you dangle intimacy. That is not patience. That is abdication. And wives don't respect abdication. So before we talk about what to do, we need to look at the 4 mistakes men like Mark make when they feel controlled by sex. Mistake number 1, begging and bargaining. Please don't be mad. What if we go away this weekend? I'll take the kids tomorrow if we can just reconnect tonight. You might feel you're being romantic. You're not. You're trying to bribe your way back into intimacy. Love is generous. Bribery is fearful. When you bargain like this, you confirm her sense that she holds the leash, and you're terrified of being cut off. No woman is attracted to a man on a leash. Mistake number 2. Sulking withdrawal. So the second mistake is the opposite. You shut down. Fine. If she refuses, you go cold, distant, sarcastic. You stop giving her affection, time, kindness. This is your version of using intimacy as a weapon. I'll deny you my heart because you deny me your body. That's not leadership. That's passive aggressive revenge. And morally, it's a failure of charity. Callan and McHugh explicitly say, even when a spouse is unjust in this area, the other spouse is still bound to live marital charity in all the other ways. Kindness, provision, good example. You don't get to stop loving because she stops giving. Mistake number 3 is escaping into sin. Porn, flirting, secret online chats, maybe even emotional or physical affairs. This is where many men end up when resentment festers. I'm deprived, so I'm justified. No, you're not. Unjust refusal from your wife never gives you a license to search for counterfeit intimacy. St. Thomas reminds us, one person's sin never excuses another's. In fact, it makes your position worse. You still lack real marriage intimacy. You've now added betrayal, and your spiritual eyesight is darker. You can't lead a wife, you're betraying. And mistake number 4 is accepting permanent injustice as holiness. And this one is subtler. Some Catholic men have been told a holy husband silently endures everything. If she refuses for years, just offer it up. Never say anything. Never correct. Never expect conjugal life again. It sounds holy, but it's not what the church teaches. Traditional authors are clear. A spouse may forgo his right from heroic charity, but he is not bound to renounce the debt if serious harm follows, like near occasions of sin or marital breakdown. He may insist on his right in a reasonable way for the good of both. So you can choose for a season to offer up that loneliness, but you are not required to allow a gravely unjust pattern to go completely unaddressed. So if you've fallen into any of those four, begging, sulking, escaping, or fake holiness, don't despair. But don't stay there either. Let's talk about what righteous headship actually does. We'll break this into three parts. First, clean your side of the street. Second, bring the issue into the light. Third, set boundaries around manipulation without revenge. So, clean your side of the street. Before you confront her, you confront yourself. Ask honestly, have I been chaste, or have I been feeding lust with porn, fantasies, or immodest media? Have I used sex selfishly, rushing, pressuring, ignoring her state of mind and body? Have I neglected my duties, leaving her overwhelmed, exhausted, drowning in kids and housework? Have I been harsh, critical, or emotionally absent? Because here's the truth. A woman who is chronically sleep deprived, constantly criticized, and carrying most of the domestic load will often instinctively clutch at the one area where she still feels she has leverage. That's not an excuse, it's an explanation. So step one is go to confession. Name porn, lust, anger, neglect plainly. Tighten your own life. Prayer, fitness, work, order in the home. Start relieving some of her genuine burdens. Practical help, better routines for kids, better financial structure. You're not earning sex back. You're becoming a man who can speak about injustice without hypocrisy dripping off you. Now next, bring the pattern into the light. At some point, you have to name what's happening. Not in the middle of a blazing row, in a calm moment. Something like, there's something I need to talk about because it's hurting our marriage and my relationship with you. I've noticed a pattern where when we disagree or when I make a decision you don't like, intimacy gets withdrawn or threatened. I'm not talking about nights when you're genuinely tired or unwell. I mean the times where it's clearly about punishment or pressure. As your husband, I know we owe each other the marriage debt. I also know I've failed you at times, and I'm working on that. But using sex as a bargaining chip or threat isn't what God wants for us. It makes me feel like a boy on probation instead of your husband. I want us to have a marriage where we can disagree and still be one flesh, not a relationship where sex is a tool to get power. I'm asking you to work on this with me. Can we talk about what's behind it and how we can change it together? So you're doing three things there. Acknowledging your own faults, naming the specific behavior, and framing it in terms of God's plan and the good of the marriage, not just your frustration. This is very much how the manuals speak. Fraternal correction inside marriage, done with charity and clarity to remove a danger to virtue. She may react defensively at first. That's okay. You planted a stake in the ground. The next step is boundaries without revenge. So what does a boundary look like here? It's not, if you refuse me, I'll refuse you affection, money, or help. That's just playing the same game, and it's not masculine. A boundary is more like, I'm not going to beg for intimacy or accept threats about it. I'll keep loving you, providing for you, and being affectionate, but I won't be pressured into disobeying God or abandoning my responsibilities just to avoid being punished in the bedroom. Now, concretely, that might mean you no longer instantly reverse a well discerned decision just because she hints, or else there'll be no sex. You stop having heavy, desperate, please want me conversations. You maintain kindness and affection, even when she's cold, without chasing or groveling. So, in moral theology terms, you're refusing to cooperate with her unjust coercion. You're still fulfilling your own obligations of justice and charity. If she does seek intimacy and there's no serious reason to refuse, you still give yourself. Why? Because the marriage debt is about God's order, not about using sex to teach her a lesson. You're breaking the weaponizing pattern on both sides. Now, you might be thinking, but well, what if she just keeps doing it? Am I supposed to live like this for 20 years? So let's talk about long-term patterns. There's a difference between a hard season, pregnancy, postpartum, depression, burnout, and a settled pattern of unjust refusal and manipulation. If for months and years she regularly refuses without proportionate reasons, uses threats about sex to control decisions, shows no willingness to talk or seek help, then you're not just dealing with a bit of sin, you're dealing with persistent injustice. So what do? First, intensify prayer and penance. Offer specific sacrifices for her conversion in this area. Fast. Take it to the Eucharist. The grace of the sacrament of matrimony is precisely for these crosses. Second, seek wise counsel. Talk to a solid confessor or spiritual director. Explain the pattern clearly, including your faults, and ask what steps are appropriate. Third, invite her to outside help. I think we need help with our intimacy and communication. Would you be willing to talk to a priest or counselor together? If she refuses, that's information. And fourth, keep your own soul safe. You may need firmer boundaries around situations that seriously tempt you to sin. Certain media, certain environments, excessive closeness with other women. You don't get to blame her if you fall, but you can and must take steps to guard yourself. The manuals are clear that a spouse who is gravely and persistently unjust commits serious sin. They are less about now do X, Y, Z practically, because every case is different. But the principles are, you may seek to have injustice corrected. You may not use her sin to excuse your own, and you may not become a tyrant in retaliation. You are called to be a man of justice and mercy, firm in truth, patient in love. Now, let me give you something concrete to work on. Over the next month, confess clearly. Name porn, lust, anger, neglect, sulking, manipulation. Ask specifically for grace to love your wife rightly in this area. Next, order your home. Pick one way each week to reduce her real stress. Better bedtime routine for kids, shared calendar, decluttering, budgeting. Headship isn't just in the bedroom, it's everywhere. Third, have the hard conversation. Use a version of the script we walked through. Don't wait for perfect timing. Aim for calm enough. Fourth, refuse the old dance. When she hints no sex is a threat, you stay calm, stay kind, and don't change course on a well-made decision just to avoid punishment. You are not cruel. You are consistent. Fifth, keep giving love. Even if she stays cold, you keep talking respectfully, giving non-sexual affection, providing, praying for her by name every day. You're not doing this because she deserves it in every moment. You're doing it because Christ loved you when you were weaponizing everything against him. That's your model. Now, everything we talked about here, marriage debt, unjust refusal, weaponized intimacy, boundaries, comes up again and again inside our patriarchy.com community and in the Nolan Bot AI coach on WhatsApp, which has been trained on my teaching and coaching calls. So if you're watching this thinking, I can't keep living in this fog. I need other men, formation and structure, not just one YouTube video, then head over to patriarchy.com/start and join Patriarchy School. Inside, you'll get courses on headship, sex, conflict, money, and fatherhood, live calls and Q&A so you can get your specific case addressed, and 24/7 access to Nolan Bot, so that when you're in the middle of a standoff or temptation, you're not relying on your feelings. You've got principled guidance in your pocket. And you'll be joining hundreds of men who are serious about rebuilding Christian patriarchy one household at a time. Now, 2 quick things before you go. First, in the comments, without shaming your wife, just share which part of this hit you hardest. The begging and bargaining, the sulking and withdrawal, the porn escape, or the fake holiness that's really just passivity. Your honesty will help other men realize they're not uniquely broken. Second, send this video privately to one Catholic husband you know who's struggling with this silently. Remember, you're not a boy waiting for a treat. You're not a tyrant taking what you want. You're a Catholic man called to love your wife as Christ loves the church, with justice, with mercy, with a clear head and a strong spine. Live that way, and over time, sex stops being a weapon in your marriage and becomes what God intended, a seal of your unity, not a tool of control. Thanks for watching. Head over to patriarchy.com/start if you want my help inside Patriarchy School, and I'll see you in the next video.